accept the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Have a seconder? Yep, thank you.
I'll second it. Oh, sorry. I had a question about the asset management that was emailed to us. When was that emailed? Sorry.
Was it this afternoon or the end of the day yesterday?
Friday.
Oh, Friday.
Okay.
The grant request?
Yes,
Federation.
that's right. That's right. Okay. Yes, I know.
Okay. So all those in favor of accepting the agenda as amended? Aye. Okay, passed. The first thing, we do have a delegation from the BC Salmon Farmers Association who have a presentation. I believe Connor's going to let them in. Can find them all.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm Anne Marie Barron. I'm a counselor and I'm the deputy mayor, so I'm chairing the meeting. Ruth or Michelle or John Paul, who would be our point of contact here?
I think maybe John was going to begin, and then I'll go through the deck, and then we'll open it up for questions if that works.
Okay, well, welcome to our meeting. We have electronically in attendance our mayor, Gabby Wickstrom. To my straight across is Councillor Shelley Downey. Beside her is Councillor Ryan Mitchell. Across the water here is Derek Cole, and then myself. And
Great.
we have a Brian too. Hi, Brian.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, so turn it over to John.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Is that working? Okay, great. Thank you very much for having us tonight. Thank you to the mayor in particular. When we spoke with her a few weeks ago, she was very quickly on it and got us here tonight, so much appreciated. We've had some very good open and frank dialogue with the mayor over the last couple of months, and for anyone out there who's listening to this or to the recording, just please know that Mayor Gabby Wickstrom is incredibly passionate for her community and understands the value and the challenges of salmon farming on the northern Vancouver Island. I'm outgoing. I'm leaving in a few days, so the presentation that you're about to see will be delivered by my fantastic colleague Ruth Salmon, who's coming in on to lead the association in the weeks to come and over the next several months with the great team, Michelle and Brian, who are also with us tonight. Michelle is our community communications manager, and Brian is our science and policy director, and fantastic folks. So please consider them us all the time as resources for any questions, concerns that you might have, because you do know that sometimes they get raised. So I'm just going to turn it over to Ruth and say thank you again to council and mayor for having us tonight. Ruth.
Thanks, John. Michelle, are you able to show this the deck, and I'll get rolling?
Sorry, I just need 1 minute here. It's wanting me to change my security settings for
Okay.
room.
I'll just chat for a second. Again, I just echo John's thank you for having us tonight. What we're planning to do is I'll run through the deck. It shouldn't take too much more than 10 minutes, just as sort of information, and then we'll have an opportunity to ask questions and have a discussion about how folks may or may not want to get involved. So there'll be lots of time for that.
You have to let her back in, Connor. Looks like she was exited.
Did I lose Michelle?
Yeah, I think so. There you go.
The pressure.
Yeah.
Through the chair.
Oh, sorry.
Can we small talk? I was wondering where you folks are located today.
Let's see, I'm in Parksville today and John's in Victoria.
Want to see if we're talking island folks here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm in Lanceville.
There we go. Excellent. Thanks, Michelle. We can probably scoot right down to the third slide. I think we've sort of thanked everybody. Yeah, that's great. Do you want to do full screen, Michelle, or do you want to just stick with this? Okay, great, excellent. So just gives you a bit of an agenda of what we're going to be talking about tonight. A bit of an overview of the issue. We'll spend a few minutes talking about the Discovery Islands decision, not long, but just to provide a little bit of context. And then we'll move right into what's at stake now with the 2022 license renewal. Michelle says her computer is freezing. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this slide is really kind of giving you a snapshot of how important the next few months are and what a critical time we're in. The association is definitely, all we're doing now is focusing on the issue of license reissuance, and we're focused on outreach like meetings like tonight and activation with our members. So you can see on the timeline that there's a couple of important sort of milestones. We'll be presenting a similar deck to our members on February the 17th, and the campaign that I'm going to be talking about tonight will launch on the 23rd. There's another sort of milestone. I'm sure many of you know that the BC salmon farmers are in federal court over the DI decision. We expect to have word on that outcome in March or April. And then even though the licenses actually come up for renewal on June 30th, we anticipate the decision being made sometime in April by the minister. So it's a very tight timeline, and we're very focused on this, this critical time. Next slide, Michelle. Just a bit of context, all the federal finfish aquaculture licenses, and there's 79 of them, are up for renewal by June 2022. There's some provincial tenures that are also up for renewal at the same time, and they're linked. If for any reason somebody didn't get a tenure, they wouldn't get a license, and vice versa. So there's two processes that are in play right now. Next slide. This is a complex slide, so I'll just kind of walk you through it. On the left, you'll see some numbers. And what we've done in preparation for this critical time is commissioned an independent economic study to look at the potential economic loss if their licenses are not renewed. And that report indicates that the economic activity loss would be 1.2 billion and 4,700 jobs. The next part of the infographic is basically, indicating that the decision can go one of two ways. And if the licenses are renewed, then we move into prosperity for coastal communities, innovation, food security, reconciliation, highly skilled jobs, stability, climate mitigation by farming climate-friendly food, and all of that, gives us prosperity for everyone. And if the licenses are not renewed, the investment will leave British Columbia, and salmon farming is no longer. And we all know that that's the opposite. And it looks like loss of benefits, loss of jobs, and it's linked to poverty. So it's a pretty stark reality of the importance of what licenses mean for coastal communities. Next slide. Here, we just wanted to acknowledge that you may have seen some social media campaigns emerging on the topic with a very different message than the one you'll hear tonight. Our opponents are certainly not interested in the welfare of coastal communities. Next slide, Michelle. Again, I mentioned I wanted to just sort of touch on the Discovery Island decision because it's important to remember sort of where we've been here. Next slide. And again, when that decision was made by then Minister Jordan, we also commissioned an economic review of the loss that was going to result as a result of that decision. And that was about 1,500 jobs. And that study also said that the loss wouldn't just be felt within the Discovery Islands region, it would be throughout Vancouver Island, the Lower Mainland, and other parts of BC, which is what has turned out to be the case. Next slide. So that ripple effect outwards is kind of shown in this slide. It gives you a visual of how sort of interrelated our sector is, that the many threads that connect salmon farming to other indirect and induced jobs in other parts of BC, in other parts of Canada. It's just a very connected kind of a sector. And one of those threads, and you can, next slide, Michelle. One of those threads resulted in the recent closure of the Mowi plant in Surrey, well after a year after the decision was made. So even then, you know, we're still seeing real and ongoing impacts of that decision in Surrey and in other areas. But Surrey is just an example of a community that many people don't relate to salmon farming, but yet that thread is there. Next slide. So just we want to spend a minute about what we see is at stake now for the license renewals and for communities such as your own. Next slide. And again, you know, in order for us to be credible with our information, we also commissioned another study looking at the potential impact, and I mentioned it before, and this is where we came out with the 4,700 well-paid jobs. If you add the 1,500 that were all, you know, being lost and as we speak in the Discovery Island, it's about 6,000 jobs in total. But the 4,700 is what is at risk if the 79 licenses are not renewed. Next slide. This is an important fact because, you know, all of these discussions are taking place and, you know, Minister Murray has made it quite clear that her concern is wild salmon, as it is with our industry as well. But in fact, over the past decade, there's been 10 formal review processes. There's been multiple investigations by credible scientists to say that salmon farms pose no more than minimal risk to wild Pacific salmon. So that's important to remember that this is a truth as all of these other discussions are going on. Next slide. But what is at risk may not be the wild Pacific salmon, but what is at risk is local communities like your own. And in the study that RIAS Inc. Did for our association, we sort of narrowed down and looked at each community with a lens. For example, this is appropriate for you folks tonight. For Port Hardy, Port McNeill, it's estimated that the potential job loss could be 512 jobs. And so we've done that for each one of the communities: Port Alberni, Tofino, Ucluelet at 181 jobs, Sunshine Coast, Metro Vancouver at 1373 jobs. Other regions of BC, again, that thread that connects other regions is significant, over 2,000 jobs. And then again, the total again is the 4,700 jobs, the total impact if licenses are not reissued. Next slide. And this slide just again sort of reinforces that that not only is this impact being felt and will be felt in BC if licenses aren't reissued, but all of Canada too, because suppliers work with suppliers across Canada, producers work with, so it really has a ripple effect across the entire country. Slide. This we added this in here just to sort of give you a sense of all of the activity that's happening right now over the next few months. So as our association, as well as the National Association, CAIA, are meeting with MPs, MLAs, local government like yourselves. We're working with Indigenous leaders in dialogue, both the national and the provincial level. And many of our all of our member companies are very active in government relations, public relations. So there's a lot of things happening in addition to the campaign that we'll be talking about tonight. Next slide. This just kind of drills down further, is that based on our socioeconomic data, we are developing materials, trying to activate our members, and that's what was going to be discussed on the 17th, reaching out to folks like yourselves, convening and coordinating meetings with our members. Paid and earned media is an aspect of what we're going to be doing to get the message out, social media. And we're talking to members, talking to stakeholders like yourselves, and all really, really focused on the provincial and federal governments, getting that message out there about the value of these licenses for coastal communities and for the future of what is possible in coastal communities. That's really what we're trying to do. So I think that's the end of the slides, and we'd love to have your questions. We'd love to have your involvement, and we would certainly support you in helping get your voice out there if that's something that you wanted to do. And my colleagues here, if anybody wants to jump in, please do.
Are there any questions from council?
Have a comment?
Councillor Cole?
Thank you. Ruth, I have a comment. Take a little bit of exception to opponents. You pretty much said opponents are not concerned with the welfare of the coast. So do you mean jobs by welfare? Or, I mean,
Yeah, no,
I'm not, if I may, I'm not an opponent, but I like to play the devil's advocate. And I know there's First Nation neighbors that care incredibly about the coast. So I just want that message.
I think that was in an appropriate statement. I think we just have different views of the importance of license reissuance. I think maybe that's probably more appropriate. Absolutely, they have their own concerns, as so do we. And really, that slide wasn't there to sort of try to make a divisive comment. It's really just the fact that there's a lot going on out there. There's a lot of attention on this issue, and you may have already seen some of it. And we have a different message, but absolutely, we just come at it from a different perspective. So yeah.
And I might just add that there's a persistent, ongoing, daily, multiple times daily amplification of one message by one group over another with another. Most of the time, a lot of the time, not all the time, completely embedded in misinformation, not true statements, not factual, hypotheticals, leading statements, ginning up fear, creating concern, taking money to do all of those things, building up a campaign largely outside of your community, against your community and your community's interests. Vancouver. So as islanders and as people in Northern Vancouver Island, understand that our opponents don't know this community, those communities. In terms of Indigenous communities, there are many in your area and in other areas on the Vancouver Island that are very supportive of this sector, very knowledgeable of the industry, very proud of what they do. very interested in doing more, and very concerned that the government might be making decisions against those interests. I think that's what Ruth is also talking about. It's frustrating for us and for you guys, and for us to make sure that we're supporting your community when we're dealing with all of that. They are not on your side.
Thank you, John. We see that with logging, harvesting as well. Councillor Mitchell.
Well, I am, eh?
I was going, who are you?
Through the chair to whoever on that group there can answer this question. I've observed that a number of
Microphone.
fish farm workers come up from, there we go, come up from Down Island by bus each week. And I'm sure that's because you can't find people here. And I'm wondering if as a company, you've given some thought to perhaps participating in our housing shortage, and alleviating our housing shortage, participating in the market in some way to encourage your employees to perhaps move here. It's a great place to live, a great place to raise young families, great recreation opportunities, as you're probably well aware. And has the company given any thought to participating in that way in our community?
You know, that's an interesting point, and it would be something we could certainly discuss, I guess, with the companies. Our association is sort of representing the whole sector, but you know, certainly I think that there's an opportunity for growth and for new opportunities, and that leads to all those kinds of positive spin-off benefits for certain in the community. John, did you want to add it?
Yeah, I mean, we're not a company. We don't employ any of these individuals. I suppose there are a few that come up in our and work in situ, but there are a tremendous number of people who live and have mortgages in the communities there and north of you. I think of Port Hardy in particular, and some of the communities in and around the Broughton a lot. I've met them. We've had them, they've hosted chamber events. They're there. This is not an industry that sort of shows up and then doesn't hang around. So, but I mean, I recognize that some of the workforce does come in, stay for a week, and then does go back. But it's not like they're going back that far to places far afield anyway. Most of the people who do work on the island live on the island, even if they don't live in the community necessarily where the farms are. And so that's another sort of ounce of misinformation that's grown into a pound.
Yep,
So that would be a no, I guess. Thank you.
Mayor Wickstrom.
I think it's important also to note at this time of uncertainty for aquaculture, investment is pulling away because, you know, if there's no certainty around the industry, Councillor Cole, they're not going to build housing and whatnot because they're, yeah, there's
Sorry.
the powers that be are just saying British Columbia is not the place to do business at the moment. The other thing I wanted to say is I did want to thank you, John Paul. I know that you're leading the association, and I just appreciate your willingness always to share and to let the North Island mayors know what's going on. And thank you so much for being here this evening, because I really felt it was important to hear for the rest of council to hear that story as well, regardless of what side of the fence and what viewpoint we have. I just think it's important to know where aquaculture is at, what it could mean in the future if the licenses are not renewed. And when we hear about the forest industry and transitioning, it's just one more thing when you say transition to what. So thank you very much.
Councillor Downey, did you have?
Sure.
And thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, for those comments.
So we know that outside our region, there are people who are truly ignorant about this industry. They are truly ignorant and unknowing, and they only know what they're hearing, and they're blasted continually by social media and multiple forms of advertising. What's happening is inside our region, many people are losing their jobs. And that includes First Nations people as well, that in single parent families, they're losing their jobs. They're having reduction in hours. Somebody who would have had a 40-hour work week is now getting 25. Their quality of life, their ability to raise their family in a good, stable work environment has been diminished because of this. As Gabby mentioned, there was a significant amount of capital that was ready to be invested in this region, millions upon millions of dollars. When this Discovery Islands decision came down, that money got pulled. It got pulled. Those were construction jobs. Those were employment jobs for a lot of the shops in around the area. And to your point, Councillor Mitchell, we do have people now traveling up to here because their job in the Discovery Islands does not exist any longer. So they are coming up here. Their choice is to go find something else, walk away from their home, disrupt their family significantly, or they took a job and they now come and they work out. They got on a boat here in Fort McNeil and they head out to a work site. So this is detrimental. And I think that if it had been a fair process, that would be fantastic, but it wasn't. It wasn't. And to that end, I would tell you, I knocked on doors of a DFO officers who grilled me on my opinion on fish farms. And I said, I support them. He said, good, because we never should have done what we did in Discovery Islands. I talked to scientists based out of Campbell River, and they said the science did not support the decision. That information went to Ottawa. So my question to Michelle and to Jean-Paul, what reception are you getting in Ottawa today with your new minister?
Michelle, do you want to take that one?
I think the smiles are.
Our new minister has had a history of advocating for the removal of farms. We don't have support of the new minister to operate in the ocean. And from our understanding, she is pushing for land-based transition prior to 2025, which would ultimately mean the removal of the industry, because as we know, land-based, especially in such a short timeline like that, where the technology to do that type of infrastructure doesn't exist, would ultimately mean the companies would pull out of British Columbia.
Yeah, I would corroborate that. I'd corroborate that. This is a minister, this is a politician who has long advocated for our end.
Demise.
Our demise, and it's not. So we'll see if it is, or there will become an alteration, a modernization of her defined views, and but not if you don't open your ears and your eyes and your hearts and your heart. I don't think she's ever met anyone from your community really that's come to her and openly talked about the importance of salmon farming to the community, and also to its role in preserving wild stocks. I don't think that's ever happened, in her opinion. I don't think this government is particularly knowledgeable of what Northern Island life, Vancouver Island life is. I think that the science is an inconvenient truth. And I think that where they live and where they reside, your issues don't matter. And that's what's happening. So, and that's the big challenge. The challenge is that this is a community, yours and others, in a sector that doesn't have an urban foothold, though it feeds it unknowingly, and depends on government or political decisions that are unfamiliar, to say the least, with the community, and unwilling to actually just say, hold on a minute here. Is everything we've been told repeatedly still is that actually the truth? As we know, sometimes in politics and in public life, to sort of stand up and put your head in the wind can be very uncomfortable, and it's certainly a government and other governments have been very unwilling to do it. So you just got to stand firm and you got to fight hard, and I think that's what Ruth's presentation and what we're talking about here is that there is this is an incredibly pivotal moment, and to the point that was made in response to Councillor Mitchell's point, maybe more people would come to live there if they felt that they actually had long-term economic prospects and there wasn't a government out trying to get them every single step of the way. Who the hell would want to set up and create a life for themselves and their family when they think it could be gone 3 or 4 months down the line, which has always been the case. It certainly has been for the last year or two. But the sector and what the communities need is stability. So we'll see. You guys should get the minister to come to one of your meetings and ask her that question yourself.
Good suggestion.
Well, I think I would like to thank you, Ruth, Michelle, Brian, and John for attending our meeting. And I'm assuming that with John, with you leaving, Ruth, you'll keep in touch with Mayor Wickstrom, and we'll be kept in the loop of what's happening and can make some decisions from there.
You bet.
Okay.
No, but seriously, get the minister to meet with you. You should ask her. You should ask her. Maybe she'll get back to you because she's not getting back to us. And also talk to maybe ask the provincial minister to come and meet with you as well. Not a bad idea. I mean, I think they need to hear. Those individuals need to hear that you want to hear from them because it's in their hands, not yours. And that's, I think, for Mayor Wickstrom, the many conversations we have, that's the frustrating part. It's out of your hands, but these are your people. How frustrating is that? And so bring them into your circle.
True.
Thank
Well,
you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you
Have a good evening.
very much.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
And good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Hey. So the next matter is the adoption of the minutes of the January 25th, 2022 regular council meeting. Moved. Yep. Seconder.
Seconded.
All those in favor? Thank you. Motion passed. Our first report is the report to council regarding the harbor project upgrade. I see we have our harbor manager and our public works manager here. This report was provided as a status report, and I will open the floor for any questions. Are we just moving to receive?
Just for clarity, I'm digging through my notes here. My thought was what was put forward to us is that additional funds, there were excess funds from the project, which were going to be used towards a redesigned fish float. So our question was, well, how did this come about? And I'm not sure that this report addresses that, but sorry, I'm just looking for my notes to make sure I'm not out there.
Did you? sorry if I may.
Mayor Wickstrom and then
Yeah, I do remember that. It was asked specifically what the scope was, or I know it was asked as though with excess funds. I'm just looking at my own notes. I'm kind of thinking regardless of what's left over, the fish cleaning station was part of the scope of the work. And the way it was communicated from our public works manager was he had made a decision as a project manager that if we went over budget, the fish float would be the first thing to go, but that was always in there. So I don't think we truly have excess funds. So, you know, I'm willing to allow the project to continue, though if we are thinking about a fish float and adding that to our budget, is it something that we could combine with that if it was in the right location? That would be the tack that I would take. Otherwise, I see it as we approved a budget. We approved a budget for so much. Fish cleaning was part of it, and that's still coming.
Councillor Mitchell.
I'm the one that asked the question at the last meeting, how much money is left over? And I don't see that answer, and that disturbs me a little bit. And I guess the other thing that disturbs me, I'm looking at the engineered drawings and I looked at the deficiencies that it looks like somehow we're being assessed for those deficiencies. And we approved to replace the existing, which was on grade. The existing approach to our floats, to PDOC. And when they put the new approach in, they raised it about 6 inches above grade. And now there's a huge deficiency that didn't exist before. And the tripping hazard that we were trying to eliminate, which we had a report from our engineers saying we should solve that problem, has been multiplied by about 5. It's a complete, I won't use the word that comes to mind. It's a disaster. The approach to the dock. It's just, it couldn't have been worse if it was designed by a 5-year-old. It's really frustrating to go down there, especially if you happen to be in a wheelchair, because now you got to go out into a gravel parking lot to get onto the ramp. And there's no reason for that except that it wasn't built right. And now it looks like they want us to pay to correct it. And then I'm seeing this list here of things that they gave us to the value of $32,000. I'm not sure why they did those things if they weren't in the tender and did them for free. And I hope it wasn't so that we would overlook the deficiencies that need to be dealt with. Because the deficiency that there is that the approach needs to be brought back to grade at the expense of the company that put it in, and bring it where the drawing shows. The drawings show that that's where it's going to be. It's going to be level with the concrete, and it's not level with the concrete. It's a mess. I don't know about the deficiencies. There's not a very clear explanation here, so I don't know what else they've identified that needs to be fixed, but certainly putting the fish cleaning station back on the dock, somewhere on the dock on the existing structure, would be a lot less expensive than building a separate float just to put a fish cleaning station on. I don't see too many places where they do that, but I guess it can be done. So I would like the answer. What's the leftovers from the budget? Because what we were told clearly from the harbor manager, public works foreman, superintendent, that there was money left over, and so they decided to put in a fish cleaning float. How much money was left over? That was the question that I asked last time, and I don't see that answer here.
So can we request that staff give us the information in the report?
Julian's here. Can he answer that question? Sorry, Chair, through the chair.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something he has right at his fingertips, but I suppose we could ask him.
To the chair for a quick
Sorry.
point. I recall the fish cleaning as relocate the existing thing, not a whole new dock. That was never discussed. So this is definitely a new thing. So I think we're confusing things when we say, of course, the fish cleaning station needed to be moved, but it was going to be put somewhere else or maybe redesigned. But there's 5 different small ones or something, but not a whole new dock. At this point, I'd like to make a motion for the deficiency list for the harbor to see that. I think that would help clarify this. Is that uneven part considered a deficiency? It's not really clear here.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Before we vote on that, through the chair, is Julian able to answer these questions?
I don't know if he's allowed to talk yet.
Am I allowed to speak to the Mayor and Council this evening?
Hi, Julian. The 2 questions that have come up that we were anticipating being in the report was, I guess you would call it a, where's the project at compared to what the budget was, so that we could establish if there was a surplus or a deficit or an overrun. And the other question was what is the punch list that is left over from what the actual scope of the project was, including, as Councillor Mitchell said, the drawings showed the approach to be on grade. The approach is not on grade now. Is that part of a punch list that still needs to be done as part of the project, or has that now become a liability outside of the contract? Are you able to speak to those, or should we be asking you to put that into a report for us for next meeting?
No, thank you, Deputy Chair. I'm more than willing to speak to my report. So, as the report outlines, it gives a sort of an overview of what was agreed by Council a couple of years ago with regards to the upgrade at the municipal harbour. Right off the bat, I would like to make something very clear, and I think there seems to be a little confusion on the word deficiency in contract speak. With our tender documents and our contractual obligations on these big or larger projects, we basically follow the MMCD format, which is the Master Municipal Construction Documents for municipalities, with regards to anything from a sidewalk to a municipal upgrade, whatever, it doesn't matter. So deficiencies, the word deficiencies in contract speak, a deficiency list is part of the normal. It's absolutely not what I think is perceived here, as in the construction company come in, they get away with whatever they can, and then they leave, and we're left with a set of deficiencies. That is absolutely not the situation here. A deficiency list is something that's born once you work your way through a contract, and according to the tender that you've actually put out for the contractor to abide by. So in answer to Councillor Mitchell's concern, yes, of course it's a concern. As per the drawings that were put forward, and I actually did put forward to council that seemed to be the best option. Included in that were many other improvements, but one of which was like basically a flush mount approach on the trestle from the concrete at the parking lot. That is now a deficiency because it is not exactly as was shown in the drawing. This is very common. It happens all the time. There are deficiencies where we call back the contractor to say, hey, this isn't exactly what we thought. Now, in this particular case, there were quite a few issues with the timeline, the trestle being manufactured off-site, and then that being brought to site. It wasn't quite the way that they anticipated on the contractor's part. As I put in my report, there is actually Blue Water Systems are actually going to rectify that and make it a sort of a flush approach where there is no sort of a ramp, a concrete ramp, which had to be actually installed to accommodate a smooth approach to the new trestle. So hopefully that clears up a little bit of misinformation, perhaps, whatever you want to call it there, but that definitely is being addressed along with many other issues which were deficiencies. Just to be clear, one thing that I believe we really should be cognizant of is whether you're doing renovations to your own home or whatever it may be, or a major project for the town, when you roll out the planned project and how it's going to look at the end, 9 times out of 10 is not the way it finishes, and there are compromises, perhaps you might call it, along the way to make things work. So that's point number 1. I apologize. Point number 2 for council, mayor and council, is that perhaps I didn't quite understand that you were looking for a dollar figure as to what's left in the budget, the $600,000 budget that was actually put forward for this. It's difficult. I haven't quite got the final answer yet, but in compiling everything so far to date, it looks possibly at about $30,000 that's left in the budget. And this, I'll just roll into the whole fish cleaning station issue. The fish cleaning float / station was discussed at the very beginning, and it was made very clear to myself in managing this project that mayor and council did not want to see the loss of that feature at the dock. We were going to lose the existing fish cleaning station because we were installing a longer ramp. Therefore, we were going to lose the hut at the end of the approach trestle, which housed the fish cleaning station. At that time, there was quite a robust discussion about that, and as it stood, the decision was that mayor and council definitely wanted that facility to be incorporated in the upgrades. We discussed possibly putting the fish cleaning station further down P Dock. We discussed a float station, which would be down at the bottom of the ramp. And that was, and also we discussed the possibility of putting it on land at the top in the parking lot where the hut presently sits. So there was a lot of thought gone into this, an awful lot of thought. And there was a lot of research, a lot of discussion with various people, various entities as to where it made sense to put the fish cleaning station, right down to the fact that if it's the bottom of the ramp, that intertidal action is far better biologically, like, you know, as far as marine life goes, to have all of these guts and bones, etc., actually move around how they should, decompose better than where it was. So there's a lot of thought gone into that as to where this float, the fish cleaning float, is supposed to go. So FYI, like, if things are to proceed as they are planned, as you proceed down the ramp, immediately to the right, nestled in between O Dock and P Dock, is where the fish cleaning station is going to go. It happens to be on a float, it's not on P Dock. Hopefully that clears up a lot of this, I think, sort of miscommunication perhaps, and I apologize for that.
Councillor Downey?
Thank you. I'm just going to read the motion that was made at the previous council meeting, and the motion was that staff bring back a report to council on the status of the fish cleaning float, the surplus funds, and the plans for its use. So while we received a report from our Public Works, it is not an answer to motion 43/2022. So perhaps we could just let staff know that motion is still outstanding, and maybe they could report back at our next council meeting.
So moved.
I've got a motion on the table.
How do you?
I do. It was for a deficiency list, but I'm going to
Oh,
withdraw
sorry.
that motion because I believe Julian addressed that. And to me, it sounds like that uneven part is going to be addressed. So without, I don't think we need to know the specifics, but thank Julian and withdraw my motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Apologies. So
So that's I don't know if I have to motion it because it looks to me as though it's a motion that's still outstanding. It hasn't been addressed. So perhaps we could just ask staff to report back at our next meeting on that.
that's okay. Staff is saying that is, they will not take it off as a completed motion. They will leave it as incomplete.
Okay, thank you.
And I would like to make a motion that we get a cost for the building and installations of the fish cleaning float. Money we're spending here. Sounds like they're gonna come back. There's gonna be a lot of money involved.
Is there a seconder for that motion?
Second for discussion.
Did you have something to?
Well, it just seems relevant to me. If there's money left over, the next question will be, what do we spend it on? And if we don't know the cost of the fishing float, we don't know if we can afford, or sorry, the fish cleaning float, or perhaps, I like Mayor Wickstrom's idea. Maybe we combine the fishing float and a fish cleaning float.
Julian, if I could just ask, are you saying that you're tentatively you think that once the project, all the final bills are in, you're thinking you have about 30,000? That is quote unquote under the 600,000? Is that correct?
So
And-
a little bit of clarity.
The fish cleaning
Sorry.
station is part of that spend, or that still needs to be spent? Or are you able to answer that tonight?
No, absolutely. No, not a problem. So the fish cleaning float, as opposed to the fishing float, like, let's be clear, the fish cleaning float is actually incorporated in that cost. It's just not manufactured. Well, it was manufactured, but it was too late for installation at the time. So that's in that cost. And the $30,000, approximately $30,000 that is left over is after that. Like the fish cleaning float or fish cleaning station was always in the budget and always in the scope of work. So the 30,000 is left over, and that is, might I add, that after there's still some outstanding work, like the plumbing, for example. We're going on a estimated cost for that, but all in, and very conservative. I believe things are pointing to about 30,000 left over, and that's after the fish cleaning station's in.
Does that make sense, Council Mitchell?
There's 30,000 unspent.
That and the
Correct.
fishing station on a float is part of the money that has been spent.
Correct.
So we would still have 30,000 left over, so that there would be either 30,000 left over to put back into coffers because the project came in underspend, or we would have 30,000 to still spend towards something additional to the scope of that project. Am I correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep.
So what we were told at the last meeting isn't quite the way it worked out. I
I
understand.
yeah, I think that's what he's saying, is there was a bit of a miscommunication or a misunderstanding, misinterpretation. I'm not sure, but
So if I may, Council Mitchell, you have a motion on the table, maybe consider changing it to estimates of what a fishing float is going to cost, because we don't know.
so that we.
Is that part of 30,000
So we
or
could-
our
we could-
extra spend? Yeah.
Correct, that's what I was was just gonna say, then we could consider how to spend that 30,000, or if we want to leave the project, come in successfully under budget.
Ballpark, you know, like, I don't.
Well, I don't
I
know.
can absolutely get a cost for council.
Sorry, Julian, we're just trying to get our motions sorted out here.
Apologies.
I just wanted to know how much it costs for that fish cleaning plan. Here's the deal. When we talked about this a year and a half ago, we said the fish cleaning was just going to be moved down onto the dock. There's no talk about building another separate float for fish cleaning. That's an addition that staff decided on that we did not vote on. So I want to know how much it's costing to build that float, because how much is really left over? 50,000, 60,000?
Okay, so you have,
Or is there enough left over?
you have a motion on the floor right now to have the costs for building the fish cleaning station float given to you. I call the question.
Clear, we're itemizing the cost of the float itself.
The
Just
float itself.
What is that line item? What is that budget item?
Correct. Motion is.
I just want to speak to that. It's a big project. I'd hate to have somebody run around chasing down a number if it's already been embedded in there, as it was presented a year and a half ago. So I don't know if that's good use of time, although it'd be great to know the number, but.
Questions being called, so we
Yeah.
can't really talk about it.
So all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's defeated.
So now I'll make another motion. And could we get an estimate for building a fishing float? And I'll just leave it at that.
I will second that motion.
I would too.
Any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor of,
Can we discuss, can we put a date on that?
Sorry?
Can we put a time limit on that? Would you consider that like in 30 days or 60 or?
Sure.
I'm just worried it's.
You can, I would change the motion to say within 30 days.
that Public Works provide us an estimate of a
A fishing.
fishing float and its location within 30 days? Motion?
Sure.
Okay. Discussion? All those in favor? Nobody to oppose, so motion is carried. And you got all those parts there, admins? Okay, comfortable, thank you. The next is the report to council, snow removal and winter road conditions. Everyone has a report from our Public Works manager. And the recommendation is that we review the report for information.
I do have a comment, if I may, Chair.
Yep, Mayor Wickstrom.
I think the reason that we asked for this was just to find out whether Public Works had what they needed in adverse weather conditions. So it's not only, in my opinion, it's not only for snow removal, it's for flooding, anything like that. And so my question would be for staff, would it be advantageous for us to have, I'm just going to pull a number out, 30,000, 50,000, something in an adverse weather fund, so that when we had these kinds of things, if your staff, for example, with the snow is maxed out to capacity, that you knew you would have a fund that you could access to be able to contract people and have that paid for. Would that be something that would be beneficial as we go through the budget process and consider what we might add? And it would be something that I would anticipate would roll over from year to year. If it wasn't used, great. If it was used, then we would top up.
So are you asking that question to Julian through me?
Well, yeah, I am, because we are seeing these through you, yes, Chair, because we are seeing these adverse conditions more and more. So how can we prepare our Public Works staff in the event of these things happening?
Julian, did you?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Chair. That's a very valid point. Hopefully that Mayor and Council received the report, and it gave some information some good information as to how we stand with dealing with the winter conditions on the roads. Without our CFO being present, I don't believe she is. I would like to discuss that with her. We are in budget talks right now, operational budget, that is. And to be quite honest with you, that actually sounds like a very sound proposal. So we have a little bit of an adverse weather fund, if we wish to call it that, where we can draw upon it to basically enlist the help of contractors, etc. As you see in my report, like this was, I think everybody agrees it was like a very strange, not normal circumstance with the weather between December and January. We were stretched thin. There's no doubt about that. But in the status section of the report, we dealt with it very well, I believe. Contractors were stretched very thin as well. Everybody was. So I think there'll be a little bit more thought into it too, not only a reserve, but some sort of contractual agreement perhaps to engage some help for the town in these kind of adverse conditions. As it stands right now, we are looking at a few additions to make it better, more timely snow removal, and dealing with the ice conditions. So, yep.
Okay, Councillor Downey, I think had a comment there.
Just a few things that kind of tweaked when I was reading the report, and you know, I actually looking at the policy, it's very well thought out. In fact, you know, specifying that prior to October 1st, we have October 31st is kind of the drop date where everything is, you know, good to go, whatever should come our way, right? We're there, so that's reassuring. However, I'm listening to the conversation here, and I guess what I'm trying to, could you clarify, are you saying that our roads were not, roads and sidewalks were not attended to very well because of budget constraints?
No, Councillor Downey, I wouldn't not agree with that. Like,
I'm just looking for clarity. I'm just the way what you said, the way it was said, sort of lent that direction. So I'm just looking for clarity. That's all.
No, as in.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Julian.
Continue,
My apologies.
Sorry. Yeah, in answering Councillor Downey's question, no, in the status, I think with the with the anticipated annual conditions that we have in the winter, we have enough equipment, staff to deal with the normal winter conditions. I would not say that it's a budget constraint in any way. It is something that Mayor and Council perhaps would want to give thought to. If we want more equipment for snow removal and ice condition situations, then that would be something that's actually over and above the normal annual expected, if you will, cost. So to put it bluntly, you know, do we want 3 snowplows on standby where for 5 years we use 1 and every 6th year we use 3? I think that's the sort of angle that I'm going with. On a normal basis, we're fine. This was just hot and heavy, and we really had to, you know, we were stretched for sure.
Okay, so maybe then, well, one, let's just say, I mean, this was unusual. Typically, we have snow, and rain. We don't have repeated fall and ice like we did in that 30-day span there. Could you also clarify what stretched thin mean? Are you talking manpower or what, or is that back to equipment and resources such as sand and salt?
In answer to that, like, we're well prepared. Like, we do actually make sure that we have enough salt and sand available to us, and that's actually outlined in the policy as well. And that is part of the condition. when we have an adverse condition like that, like extended for so long, for sure, it's calling on all resources. It's stretching everything because we're not actually banking on that every year. So it was not only equipment. I mean, we could have used 2 or 3 plows to be able to satisfy, everybody in cleaning the roads of snow. And also, we could have used more people just because it was, and again, in the policy, we're scheduling employees at various times, split shifts, and so on.
Okay, thank you, Julian.
Yep.
So that, you said policy, and that's where I live. My question was, it's 2 questions. Number 1, were the targets in the policy, were they hit this year prior to like 3.1 to 3.5? Is that what you followed for this year? Did you hit your policy targets?
Yeah, I would have to say yes.
Okay. And further to what Councillor Downey had said in our previous meeting, you'll see that this policy was approved in 1998 and it was reviewed again in 2015. So that's almost 20 years. Is this a policy that you feel is still at a good spot, or is this one that should be being reviewed sooner than later? And maybe I don't need an answer for that, but
I can give an answer.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, it's a well-written policy. I've reviewed it numerous times, almost on an annual basis. I would definitely not say that it's a top priority to actually review this, although it would definitely be a good exercise in which to do so. And perhaps we could put some consideration in there for extreme circumstances, although it is addressed in there, but we can definitely review the policy for sure.
Okay, thank you. There's no other, oh, sorry, Councillor Mitchell.
Well, I just think that the Public Works did a pretty remarkable job staying on top of a very trying winter. And we probably won't see another one for 15 years like this. So I don't think we need to worry too much about making any changes.
Okay. Thank you, Julian.
You're welcome.
So on to 7C, the report to council on the purchase of the N95 masks. There's a report to staff, and they are looking for a recommendation. Sorry. Yes, they're looking for a recommendation that the town reserve the purchased N95 masks for council staff and emergency responders, and that the town purchase the more readily available 3-ply masks for public distribution. We also had a email from the, I want to say Island Medical
Health Officer.
Advisor.
Yeah.
Dr. Enns.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm looking for is some direction for staff here, please.
I'll move the report for discussion.
You seconder? Yep, Councillor Cole.
So I would, a couple comments. One, I would not see value in going out to purchase additional masks at this time until we know what the uptake has been of the ones that we currently have purchased. My other comment is around the town reserve, the N95 for council staff and emergency responders. The intent behind that was to have them available for the public who was looking for them. And the 3-ply masks are available for purchase out in the community already. And so that need can be met that way, or people have the option of going to the on office and picking up the N95. So I'm concerned that our town office is going to be sitting there with 1,700 masks as we're starting to move from pandemic to endemic. So let's use up what we have before we go and purchase any more.
Is there any other discussion there? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Could we get some idea what the uptake has been? How many masks have been distributed?
Do we know that at this point? It's probably so minuscule. We have,
Yeah.
it's been, yeah.
Been no public engagement inviting for masks, as far as I'm aware of.
No, thank you. We've just had them available at the front counter. I wanted the council to have this discussion before there was any public
advertising.
engagement.
This may be for information.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Shelley, I'll wait.
No, go ahead. I had my say.
No, I just wanted to say that if we did any public engagement, I'm in agreement with Dr. Charlene Enns that it should be the 3-ply masks, and that those N95s should be saved for our emergency services and staff. That's all.
What's the expiry date then?
Yeah, that was sort of my concern. It's like, we don't have that many emergency personnel. We save 700 for them or half to the public and then reassess or something.
I
Well-
personally think that this should be a conversation that staff deals with. We gave a motion, we asked staff to purchase some, make them available to members in the community, expecting them to be at the town office, the harbor office, or the public works yard. And as far as meeting the needs of our emergency staff, emergency responders and stuff like that, I mean, this is a management decision really at its heart. Our intention at this council table really was to be able to have them at locations in the community for people who could not afford to go and purchase them themselves. And we did have the funding from the COVID relief to fund this. So I would be happy just to leave this report as a receive and file and just pass this back to staff to manage as they see fit.
If I can make one last point, we've had staff have had masks from day one at the office and in all of our locations for the public to use, just not the N95. So we've always provided them for the public.
That's true.
So the motion was to receive and.
I'll
file.
second that.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Are you opposed or
No,
in?
I'm not.
Okay,
Just slowing the uptake.
that's fine. It's 8:30. Motion is passed and staff got that. You got it clear? Okay. Oh, and then we had extra ones here. 7D. We have a report from council, or from staff to council regarding the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Asset Management Funding Stream. And the conclusion is that we provide direction to staff regarding the presented grant funding opportunity. I did have a discussion with CAO Nelson Smith prior to the meeting. And I would like to ask him to explain, because I thought we had a plan. But if I could ask you to explain how that plan and what we need are two different things.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. As stated in my report, council put forward a resolution for us to apply for funding to upgrade our water system. We've had McElhaney doing the grant application, and their lead on that grant application came forward to us and said part of the grant application is to have a water conservation plan, which we have, and an asset management plan, which we have. However, in looking at our asset management plan, it is at the bare minimum of what a community needs. They weren't satisfied it would be enough to gain the attention of the grant reviewers. In that discussion, they brought forward that the Federation of Canadian Municipalities does have funding available to create asset management plans. And the recommendation from the grant writer said that it would go a great lot further for the grant reviewers to see that we are dedicated to having a robust asset management plan for the town of Port McNeill. And by having a resolution to apply for this grant, we could include that resolution within our application, just to bolster our, well, twofold, to bolster our advantage in getting the ICIP grant, so for the water upgrades. And we do need to have a robust asset management plan. It is something that we've been lacking for several years. And in light of some of the recommendations that have come from council for our budget, so that we can forecast expenditures, is where it would show great benefit.
So Councillor Downey, then Councillor Mitchell, please.
Thank you for the explanation. I guess oftentimes around this table, sometimes we have, as you say, done the lower end of the spectrum. We haven't shot for the moon. We've just met what the requirements were. So my question, I wonder if we go for this robust plan, what, you know, I'm unsure what that would look like or what that would mean, but are we then setting ourselves up for some constraints and obligations that we would struggle to meet going forward in the future?
To you, yep.
Yep, through the chair. I don't believe so. It's an asset management plan, and I think the focus is on the management. It allows us to, like Councillor Barron said before, do we need to replace that pickup truck next year or 10 years from now? And that's what a robust plan will tell us. It will give that forecasting of you know, when is a new roof due for the old school? You know, when do we need to replace the fleet of pickup trucks? So I think from my use of asset management plans, it's a tool for not just a local government, but any entity to be able to budget accordingly.
Councillor Mitchell?
I guess, first, I struggle with, I believe, and I think as reasons to do something. We need to have base on what we know. And then what we do know is that we have strategic priorities, which we're trying to work out what they're going to be. And all of a sudden, 2 weeks ago, we had a rush to approve the original application for this. And now another rush. We don't get adequate time to think about it. And I know we got two of them that are just sort of rammed at us, and they're taking precedence over other things we have to consider. And I just like to put this on the back burner for a little while, and let's read through it and think about it and look at all the ramifications. Just because there's grant money doesn't mean we need to jump in and do something. And I feel like this just came out of left field for me, just doing this whole thing. Boom. It wasn't part of our plan, it just showed up. And all of a sudden it's overtaking us. And I think we need to stop and think. There's time for us to maybe have a little bit of thoughtful consideration instead of having something 5-page document chucked at me a couple hours before the meeting. And then I'm supposed to make a decision today. I don't feel comfortable with that.
Councillor Cole?
Yeah, two things. Just a reminder of the water grant deadline was like just now, or like, is there a time? I noticed this grant is March. Well, that's project. Sorry, that
I
time.
do believe it's the 22nd of February that it's due.
And I guess just the big question for me is like, what staff member? This is a pretty robust plan. Like, what staff member would look after asset management? My understanding, it's almost a CFO job, but I'm not. Is that person? Has our CFO been consulted? And
Be an accounting function.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, in most companies.
And so, could we march ahead with our CFO, and the CFO just works on it without a grant? You know, we do a resolution right here saying we want our CFO to work on asset management. That's maybe a compromise. I'm not convinced that
I didn't make
we
a
need
motion,
like,
so-
yeah. I'm not convinced we need sort of a Vancouver, say,
Yeah, I
Vancouver
think
asset
it's-
management plan. It could just be done in-house. And
Absolutely, but without the pressure of, we need to have this done and approved and apply for a grant because we want to get funding for the third run of a grant application. We weren't in the first one, we weren't in the second one, and all of a sudden, we're in a crisis at the third one. And on this water infrastructure grant, we didn't apply in phase 1 or phase 2, now in phase 3, it becomes an emergency, and we just have to run it ahead of everything else. I just want to stop for a minute. And, because this commits us to a whole bunch of money too, at the end of the day, if we do happen to get that grant. And do we want to, would we spend some time thinking about spending 300 grand?
So could I just get clarification from staff? We have an asset management plan that was put together to maybe a not the standard that this is looking for. The money for the water system, as you say, is a third intake. We can apply for that with the current asset management plan. The people who do this for a living are telling us you may not, your chances are not, it's like not a scratch and win, it's the 649. Having said that, we didn't have asset management plan on our strategic priorities. The CFO has been in place for 2 weeks. She may very well come back to us and say, I think we need a better asset management plan, correct? Because our previous CFO, 2 CFOs have both said that it needed repair, but we haven't had someone in long enough to do it. So what Councillor Mitchell is proposing is feasible, but then it would require us to then say to staff, giddy up, that's where we want to put some priority, which could already be the CFO's priority, but we just don't know that yet because she hasn't got her gumboots out of the puddle yet. Correct?
Yes, I would, yeah, concur with that.
Okay. So the, did you have
just a
something?
quick
Sorry.
question. So if we were successful in this grant for the asset management, what does that money do? Hire a contractor or help pay our CFO or independent contractor come in? Kind of leaning towards in-house, maybe. Our CFO might be better suited for a job like that than somebody coming in from out of town.
So staff is looking for direction on the grant application. Can I have a motion for something, please?
Receive and file?
That, I guess, is implied direction.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
second the file.
May I ask a question?
Councillor Downey?
Who would be submitting this application? Who would do the work for this application funding?
It would likely be a combined between myself and the CFO.
The application will be done here in-house then?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, and okay, and is there time to have this completed before this other application goes in?
No, what we're looking for is for the water upgrade application is to submit the resolution from council because likely the funding for this, there is no beginning or end date for this, the asset management application. It's just an ongoing funding source.
Okay. Okay, it's not tied to anything. It's just an opportunity. There's cash at the bank. Go grab it if you need it.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Julian has his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Julian has.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that was, I think CAO Pete Nelson Smith actually answered that, but just a little bit of clarification. It is a combined effort two things at play there. Obviously the grant application for the water system upgrade is between McElhaney, myself, representing the town. And clarification there, just to actually reiterate what CIO Pete Nelson Smith said, is that it's been made very clear to us that the grant application we're putting in right now, which is due on the 23rd of the month, would stand far better chance of approval if we had a robust water asset management plan. I worked with CFO Roden back in the day to put this together. It's never been reviewed since, and it's a very basic plan. What the grant writer at McElhaney is actually suggesting to us is that if we actually put, because there's no time, this is a very lengthy procedure to go through the asset management plan. It's very involved. It takes an awful lot of our time to actually put a meaningful document together. There is no time between now and the 23rd of February. However, what would be the second best is if that we did actually get a resolution from council committing the town to actually upgrading that water asset management plan in the near future for future grant applications. That would be the second best, and it would actually go a long way.
Could I just get some clarification there? Because we've been talking about asset management, and then you're saying water asset management.
Correct.
So we're looking at applying for a $30,000 grant to study all our assets, or to study our water asset?
So this is just the water asset management plan. So TAMP, the tangible asset management plans, which were put in place. Municipal governments were supposed to have these in place. They are broken down somewhat. So this is not all of our assets. It's just the water asset management plan. And as CAO Pete Nelson Smith did say, we do have one in place. However, moving forward, it's recommended that we actually put together a far better document. And if we actually put that in our grant application for this round of funding for the water system upgrades in 2023, just the resolution that we're committing to actually doing that would help us a lot.
So we could put a resolution forward that we want a more robust plan put together, but we don't have to apply for this grant money. That's correct. And that would get us the completeness for the grant application for the water that is due on the 23rd of February. And then, as Councillor Mitchell has stated, we can have the time to actually read through that grant application. We could still apply for the grant because the resolution is in place, and we could make a decision after our CFO has had a bit of breathing space and we've fully absorbed the 20-page document to make a decision how we make that commitment. Because all you need is a resolution tonight that says that we're going to upgrade our, you need it to specifically say water management asset?
The water asset management plan, correct.
Okay, well, I would be comfortable to make a motion to, or
There's a motion on the floor.
was there?
I don't know, was it seconded? I don't know if it was seconded. Councilor Mitchell's.
It's to receive and file.
Can we change that now that we understand the
You
parameters?
can vote against it. I mean, you can vote it on it
okay,
and then move on.
Which,
I'm
Call
not
the
gonna
question.
do it.
okay, call the question. All those in favor of receive and file? Opposed? Motion is defeated.
Chair, may I just speak to it quickly? So if we just go ahead and say yes, apply, and it's an 80% grant, okay, of 30, so we're talking about $6,000 investment. If they say you get the grant 6 months from now, like we could say no, it just needs to look nice for these people. for the water grant. So I'm in favor of the recommendation.
Yeah, I
to
would
do it as
second
is.
that motion if that's your motion. Do we apply?
My
for the
motion
grant?
is to apply for the municipal asset management program grant.
I'm seconding that.
But does that answer what Julian needs for this other grant application? It does?
I believe, sorry, Madam Chair, yeah, I believe it does, yep.
Okay.
CAO Pete Nelson Smith, can you corroborate with that?
He's nodding his head.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion? I would just like to say that if we apply for the grant, I would like it to come back to us for a decision on how
What the focus
robust
is. Yeah.
it is with some input from our CFO. Otherwise, is there any,
I mean, we could do a follow-up motion, something
I would-
like have our CFO look into asset management or something.
okay, so all those in favor?
I was gonna say something.
Oh, sorry.
I'm not in favor of this, and the reason I'm not in favor of it is I haven't had time to even read through this thing. And I bet nobody else has either, to go through this document. We get it slapped on our desk a couple hours before the meeting. And
Well, it was emailed to us Friday. So, it was
emailed to us.
emailed
Yeah.
to us on
So
Friday.
what's the rush? If all they need is a resolution to upgrade our,
Because
asset
Counselor
management plan.
Cole
Yep.
he didn't make the motion to upgrade the plan. He made a motion to
Right,
apply for
yep.
the grant, which was seconded. So I called the question on
favor?
this, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Would you be making a follow-up motion regarding?
I forget now what yes. the
So the
follow-
follow-up motion was that if we receive this grant, that the CFO would come back to council to seek direction on how robust this might be.
I'll second that. Other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Are you two voting?
I'm in favor.
Great, Ryan. You're in favor? You didn't vote?
yeah, that's the.
No
presume in
hand
favor
means
then.
in
Okay.
favor.
Then it's
Yeah.
carried.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now we're on to number 8. Bylaws.
No, we
No.
have me in there.
Oh, sorry.
I
We
believe.
did have you, but I tucked you away.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm bringing forward a recommendation for a member to join the Tourism Advisory Commission. Her name is Natalie Stewart, and this is our first one we're bringing forward, and we do have a couple other members that we're looking at, but it's a funny time of year, so we're trying to connect with them and just nail them down. So we are just looking for the approval of council for Natalie Stewart to join the Tourism Advisory Commission.
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you.
For comment,
Second. Yeah, same.
I just want to comment, Natalie's, I work with her on the Vancouver Island North.
Yeah.
And I think she'd be a great addition, but she is from Port Alice, and I just wanted to bring that up because in the past, we've had discussions around this table whether you should be from Port McNeil or not, and I disagree with that, but I do support this application. Thank you.
We call the question.
Call the
Oh, I
question.
had a comment, sorry, which now just flew out of my head. I was just wondering, is the commission just going to appoint people, or is at any time we're going to put ads out? I am in favor of Natalie. I think she's great, and because you are working so closely with Vint, it just makes sense. But will
believe-
there be ads for other positions, or?
There are ads out there already. And so
Okay.
there's
Okay,
nothing
great.
to stop anybody from
Okay.
seeking a position.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor? Nobody to oppose, so motion is passed, carried.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. On to bylaws. There's a report to council for the harbor management amendment bylaw. There is a recommendation from staff The council review the report and the two preceding reports for information and give harbor management bylaw 709/2022 first, second, and third reading.
I'll motion it, and I have a questions.
I'll second it so we can get the discussion going.
You know, I hate to second guess or even, and you know, it comes off that way, and I'm sorry, but I know the group is working hard. My question really comes down to the rates, because we have a marina in town, privately owned marina, that invests private dollars to keep their marina afloat, and their rates are higher than ours. That's my first point. The other one is we have had discussions around this table as to should the marina be paying more of its way, or is that really a taxpayer-funded service to visitors and residents of Port McNeill and the region? So we do have a fair variance between ourselves and North Island Marina. And so while I appreciate the work that the commission has done and the rates, and I don't want to send them back to go and readdress everything, I would ask that we strike under Schedule B, page 40, Schedule B 1.6. And it states that rates in sections 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7 would change every January 1st of the calendar year based on the annual consumer price index. And the reason I would ask for that to be struck is I think that there may be more room to go on moving our rates up that might be outside of the consumer price index. And just to further this, I will say that we now have a tourism advisory commission, and we have somebody who's looking after tourism. We have a harbor manager, but I would tell you this privately owned marina is at boat shows across the US, everywhere, spending their money to promote this marina, and we do get some of the overflow here. So, you know, we are benefiting from that, and you know, we don't have to match their rates, but perhaps we could be a little closer. So my motion is that we strike on Schedule B 1.6.
I'll second that. I did want to make a comment on that. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Shelley. I think the rates, correct me if I'm wrong, Deputy Mayor, they looked at other municipal rates, correct? When they were deciding what the new rates should be, or do you have an answer to that question, Councillor Barron?
The information was, I think, June of last year. I'm looking towards
Okay.
Manager Rebecca at the back there. I think it was municipalities that we looked at. I believe we did look at the North Island Marina. But I can't remember why we landed where we landed.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I was just wondering, if it was comparing to municipal. I do agree with, I think that the reason to put 1.6 in is so that we could make incremental increases, but you know, maybe just having that struck just for this year so that we could review it one more time to make sure that all of our rates were where they should be. And we've talked before, I remember years ago when they raised the boat launch, we all knew that we were getting a really great rate. And then all of a sudden it shot up, I don't know how many 100%. And then it was backed up because we realized, okay, we're going to incrementally get to where it should be for a boat launch pass. And I think it would be kind of the same way in using user fees for the harbor. So if that's a motion, Councillor Barron, yeah, I do support that, to strike everything with striking 1.6. And one other comment, I'm not going to die on this hill this year, but for next year, perhaps we can look at resident, transient, and a regional rate for our High Creek and Fish Heights neighbors. But I'm not willing to die on that hill and fight for it here today.
And that it did come up at the sorry, Councilor Mitchell, I'll get right to you. It did come up at the harbor of the resident versus non. And it went back to, there was a definition of a resident. There wasn't a definition of the Broughtons and Hyde Creek versus Wasp versus Sayward. And that's why it kind of stopped there. But I actually do agree with you there. Anyway, Councilor Mitchell?
I'm just looking at the municipal harbor rates, and I don't see a differential on the day rates for transients and residents. I'm just wondering why that is on the day rates, not on, there's a monthly and an annual, but not a day rate. And that typically, that's where a lot of the money is made in the summertime in small marinas, is on the day rate for transients spending a night or two or three. And that tends to be a fairly significant portion of their income. I don't see that in here. So I'm just wondering about it. The other thing I noticed is that the projected increase is around 8.5% for this year, which is significantly more than what section 1.6 is going to be bringing in if we kept it. And I guess I feel like one of the benefits of living on the North Island is that we do get a better deal on our merger for residents of a little community like Fort McNeil. And to be quite frank, if I had a 40-foot boat, I'd probably put it over in Sontulla if the rates went much higher, because they're not nearly as high as we are. And so I think we need to think about that we need to be friendly towards the people who live in the community. At the same time, we have to be at least break even or make a profit on our operation. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't. Our private marinas making a profit, I'm sure that's why they're in the business. And we shouldn't hinder that by being particularly low on transient moorage, which is where most of their income is coming from in the summertime.
Summer.
So we need to be competitive in a good way at that level, and not be hammering locals by having a blanket increase on the locals. I guess I'd like to know why there's no separate rate for.
If I might make a comment on that, I think if you look below on 2.4 and 2.5, there's summer and winter rates. And I guess perhaps the assumption is that locals are going to be mooring for a month or two at a time rather than for a few days. And I believe from past conversations when I was attending meetings on the other side, if a local wants to just put it in for a few days, rather than launch their boat every day, then they're now not competing, but being in a normal time pre-COVID, taking prime space where we can make the most money from transients. So I think that's the conversation that I remember Shelley might be able to clarify because she was at the table at that time.
Nope. Anne Marie's probably knows better because she was in the gallery.
So we have a motion on the floor to.
Sorry, and just one last thing. Those rates, monthly resident rates, those have not increased. So they're still the same as they were before, the monthly winter and summer rates.
I speak, Henry? Yeah. Yeah, I just sort of don't get the logic of striking 1.6 incremental raises to raise it significantly later. I think that was kind of the argument being made. So I'm happy to see that here. We're our budgets, heard from the other councillors, we have to raise it every 2% every year. Otherwise it'll catch up with us. So I just don't know why we wouldn't do it here.
The thought
And
is
I
that it
did
might
want-
need to go more than what that CPI
Sure, but
rate
that
is.
could add up pretty quick and it could be competitive rates. And I see the private marina as more of a partnership. I mean, if we weren't here, they wouldn't be selling gas like they are. So, there's a few different ways to look at it, right? If there was no municipal harbor, they're benefiting from all the fuel sales as well as, sales in their commercial establishments. So.
Councilor Mitchell?
The only other rate that I have a struggle with is the liveaboard rate. $1,000 a year extra for liveaboard. that's under $100 a month, and that includes hydro. And we can write them with a 30 amp service.
And
So with the minimum of effort, they can use $1,000 worth of hydro.
that,
So I went and looked at what they're charging in other marinas where they allow liveaboards. And then they range from $400 to $700 a month. That includes mortgage. So we're
so that
doing
was a
that
tough,
for about $200 a month.
that was a definitely has been a conversation that has transpired at the meetings more than once. Because it's, you know, if you could have a liveaboard, which we have capped, we've said there's grandfathered and there's no more, but there are people who have boats in town who say it's cheaper for them to be classed as a liveaboard and go live in their house from a
Yeah.
mortgage point of view. So would there be all these little points that have come up though? Would we be proceed with the motion as it is with then a second motion that has those specific things that go back to the harbor committee so that between the harbor manager and the harbor committee, they have some specific points that in some ways we are supporting what they are having concerns with, but they don't want to see, maybe don't want to be the ones to drive the boat on those rate increases. But they're getting support from council essentially is what I'm hearing.
Can I get clarity? If we left 1.6 in, that wouldn't stop us from reviewing the rates, would it?
I believe
At
that
another time?
every year, are they not?
They
That
should
usually
be
is
if they haven't been.
Sure. Anytime we want, this could come back to the table and we could,
only if somebody remembers who, this here, it could be, this could be construed as, you know, we're good to go, just set it aside. There's no need to bring it forward. We put that provision in there.
Yeah,
That's
but it
that's-
also could be, could be to Councillor Cole's point that, you know, it's in there and so that if it gets dropped, that at least there's an incremental increase, right? I guess that's the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
That I'm thinking about.
may I ask about the timing of this? I think there was a certain rush in order to get the rates out. And so could we do first and second and third reading and then do a change on the fourth reading? But we could do first and second right now and do another reading, third and fourth with any other changes.
Right, because it has to be out by the deadline for cutoff, right?
March 1st. I
March
think.
1st? Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, I guess my suggestion is,
So do you want to withdraw your motion and remake it to do first and second reading? Yes.
would that,
Is?
is that what the direction of council would prefer? Is just to go to 2 readings this night? You know what? I'll make it 2 readings because we can always call for a third tonight too. Yeah.
Okay.
Could you amend my motion just that we give this first and second reading, please?
and that's minus removing 1.6 or include. See, I guess my suggestion is if we do as is first and second reading, it comes back to us, we have time to think about it, kick it back to the harbor.
Harbor has a meeting on Thursday.
Can I get clarity? What motion is on the floor? Is it that we move this for 3 readings or is it my motion that we strike 1.6? Or did I think I lumped them all together.
Through the chair to Councillor Downey, your motion was that we strike 1.6.
Okay,
But just,
we
So
have-
you could just withdraw your motion if you wanted to.
yeah. I'll withdraw the motion and we'll,
okay, so the motion is to give this first and second reading. Everybody's,
I'll second that. And just with a comment though, that in order for it to make it for the March or when it needs to be, we may have to have a special meeting just to give it a final reading because it has to be 24 hours before is that correct? CAO, after we give it the third and
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. There needs to be 24 hours.
so we could have a third reading at our meeting on the 22nd, and then we would have to have a quick meeting for a fourth reading on the 23rd or 24th in order for it to be processed in time.
That's correct.
And we could direct that all these points that were brought up tonight be reviewed at the Harbor Committee meeting on Thursday night with any changes brought back to council prior to the 22nd meeting, which then this is either going to come back exactly the way it is, or it would come back with some possible changes.
Correct.
Everybody kosher with that?
I'm satisfied.
Okay, all those in favor? No opposed, so passed. Do you guys have, while we have everybody fresh, just for 2 seconds, do you have a list then? Or Rebecca, have you got that in your brain? What specifically,
If we could go over again the
Yes.
specific points that you guys want us to review.
the liveaboard fee? The, this, the moorage on page, Shelley, help me out here, 40,
40 is the monthly and such.
the dailies, daily and monthlies, with consideration to Sointula and Vancouver Island or North Island Marina. I guess we don't have to be that specific. You'll bring that
Well, I
up.
think that was pretty specific. It was the rates compared to North Island Marina. So if we
Okay.
could get that.
Okay. And that was it, right? Was the liveaboard and the
And
municipal.
maximizing the revenue from transients by being real close to North Island, to the competitors' rates.
You got that?
That's what
You
I
got that written down, Rebecca, for the meeting?
Yep.
Okay.
nail them.
Mayor Wickstrom, did we miss something that went back to you?
I don't, did you say, sorry, did you say the yearly rate for, Councillor
Liveaboard.
Mitchell had brought that up for liveaboard.
Liveaboard?
Okay, okay, thanks then. Yep, it's good.
I just wanted to put one more thing out there, like the North Island rate could just be simply tied to postal codes. You're from Port Hardy, Port Ellis, you know.
Or what about
It could be-
regional district? Because that would include loss as well, right?
Sure, yeah, like there's ways, I think simple ways to look at
Well,
somebody's.
no, regional district is Winter Harbor. It's
Can I-
all over the place.
Can I remind you guys that this marina is paid for by Port McNeil business and tax dollars? We just had a whole discussion about a float dock, whether we should have a fishing float or a float for a washing station. All those things are paid for from Port McNeil tax dollars. They're not coming, that marina is not funded by tax dollars coming from the Broughtons or Port Hardy or other communities. That, this becomes the question is how do we fund this marina? We are known to have an excellent marina. Hear about it up and down the coast, that we have a fantastic thing because we do put money into it. And for a long time, people living in Hardy kept their boats here because we were so cheap and our facility wasn't falling apart. So, it's great to be generous, but let's remember, who's funding this. So when we talk about a North Island rate, I live in Hyde Creek. I'm fine paying whatever rate is for the non-Port McNeil resident rate because I know my tax dollars aren't coming here for my home. They're going elsewhere. My business tax dollars come here, but I'm not.
And it's,
The only fee I pay to use this marina is the one when I buy one of these launch passes or pay moorage. So
If I may, my argument is more economic. It brings economic activity to the town and people. So that's my angle.
and I know
Yeah.
that at the Harbor Committee, the discussion has been rather heated around whether or not this marina should be actually holding its own, or if it should be taxpayer funded. There was an argument that, the pool is kind of subsidized. Well, the marina should be subsidized. Well, the pool can be used by everybody. The marina is only by people who have boats. And it has been quite a robust discussion. And it's, there was an argument put forward that transients come in and they do their thing and they get the minimums that they need to get and they leave. And the people from Hyde Creek come in and they spend their money locally within
All
the
day
town.
long.
So
yeah.
it is a very tough discussion. I don't think it would hurt to toss it back to them and ask them to consider it again. They may come back and say no, or they may come back and say, yes, this is what we think.
I think I'm just saying, don't give away the farm.
Yep.
Let's be reasonable here. That's all.
Yeah, I hear I hear you, Councillor Downey. I guess I'm also looking at, there are volunteers and whatnot in our communities, and they really think of themselves as Port McNeilians, but I hear your point about it's, that they're not taxpayers. So
So the next staff report was the recommendation to council from Peter Darwin, the Harbor Advisory Group Chair. And he is asking that the bylaw be amended as stated above. And I'll move that the bylaw be,
I thought we did this.
Yeah.
Is that not all just one?
Yeah, it was in the wrong order. It should have been further up. Mr. Darwin's report should have been further up.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Chair. For clarity, it is all part of the one report. It was just added as supplementary information.
so we don't have to do anything with this.
No.
Thank you. No problem. Now we're on to the local elections. Am I right? We're on to number
Yeah.
9. Okay. All right. So we have a report in front of us that is a supplement to a report we had earlier. We had a report and we asked for additional information regarding the time commitment and training that was going to be required by the deputy and election person, CEO and DCEO. There is a recommendation there from staff that our CAO be appointed as the CEO and that our DCO be appointed as the DCEO. In going through some of the other processes that we're going through, I reached out to CAO Nelson Smith today and had a conversation with him around a couple of concerns I had. In going through some conversations with the third-party consultant, she said how she likes to explain workload is an electrical outlet. So if you've got 2 plugins and you plug in a 6-pack, you still only have 6 kettles you can plug in. You want to plug the coffee pot in, you have to unplug a kettle. My concern is that this CAO has his 6-pack and maybe a couple of others. And we have some new staff and we have some staff who have been around and have a great proven track record over their years. And in the effort of growing the staff, of succession planning, I would like to recommend that we appoint the CAO as the CEO with the understanding that we would then appoint 2 deputies, which we've checked and we're allowed to do that. We would appoint 2 deputies, being Laura Evans and Connor. And the idea is that with our CAO's past election experience and his understanding of the local government, he will be there as a resource, but between the 2 of them, I don't know how to say this anyway, other than between the 2 of them, they should be able to figure it out without bugging him a whole lot, but he is there to be available. And then we get 2 staff members trained, and it's a bit of excitement for both of them, and I think we'll get good value out of what we're doing. The training is now all online. It's not a go down and do a weekend thing. And maybe I've talked too much.
I think that that's a fantastic idea. I would make that motion.
The AO is the guy in charge. Laura Evans and Deputy and Connor Mork will be the 2 under him, with the understanding that he's not going to be the one doing the work. He's going to manage those 2 doing the work of it.
Second that.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'll comment. Yeah, like this work could be contracted out and we would have more staff. I wonder if anyone would entertain like looking into that, because I mean, that's a full month of staff time, no matter how you cut it. We're at the last year of our term. We've got a large list of projects to be done. that's requires dynamic work. There's tons of plans, like people do this. There's been people in our town that have worked for Elections BC and the federal election and ran those whole campaigns. So we're not necessarily talking about parachuting somebody in for $100,000 or something. I just, without knowing that number and this far out, I just think it would be a good option for us to consider. Staff time is precious, and we're been understaffed all up until now. So what makes us think that we're just going to catch up all of a sudden? And there's likely to be several projects that should be wrapped up before the next council. So I think it might be a busy time, and I appreciate along the lines, Council Barron, of saving some staff time, but if we're considering that, then maybe we should consider the whole kit and caboodle.
When we were having this discussion, CAO Nelson Smith and I, we may be a bit behind the 8 ball as far as even trying to get a contractor in now. If you look at the report that came in there from Elections BC with the training actually started in November. You could start accessing it. So other municipalities actually did this motion earlier and had appointed their people earlier. So in talking to the CAO and listening to what was done at the last election and the amount of templates that were set up so that there was work that didn't need to be redone. And I think I have some thought process and understanding of what's going forward, because I totally share your concerns.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's manageable, provided it's worked within the framework that we just established.
If I could just clarify too, some may have gone earlier, but the regional district just appointed theirs. So it's not all municipalities and RDs appointed in November.
Can I just get some clarity, and maybe this will address some of those concerns, is that in the first report, there were dollars attached to the roles of these roles. So then my question is there's compensation. We have training 16 hours, document preparation. Are these hours being done during business hours, 9 to 5? Or are they being done outside of business hours, and that's why there's extra compensation?
Would you like to address that?
Yes, the lion's share of the work is done outside of regular working hours for exactly that point. Is essentially we are now contractors to the province running an election. So in 2018, when I took the elected chief election officer training, it was done over a weekend in down Island. A lot of the work I did as the chief elections officer, I did at home in my spare time.
Okay, so in terms of the work of the town that needs to be done, that in theory would be impacted minimally by the designation of these officers to these roles.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I'd like to make the point, I don't know if you have ever worked 10-hour or a full day and then worked all night and then worked the next day, like productivity would suffer if you're trying to essentially work a job and a half. So again, I just think we weren't presented with the option of a contractor. I don't know if it's too late, but that's what I would like to have seen as an option.
So the motion on the floor right now is for Pete Nelson Smith, Laura Evans, and Connor Mork. Could I have all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. That was old business, by the way, in case anybody. There is no new business. There's no items to be made public from in camera. I would like a motion to go in camera under Community Charter Section 90-1-G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality, and Section 90, bracket 1 bracket D, the security of the property of the municipality.
So moved.
Seconder? All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Second.
No, I was going to second it, but Councillor Cole did. It's all good.
Okay, motion is passed. Is there any, there's no public and there's no media? So I'm assuming there's no questions. Can I have a motion to adjourn and go into camera? Move. Seconded. All those in favor? Aye, aye. And I'm
I'll be
assuming
right
take
back.
a couple of minute file break. Okay, thank you.
Oh.